The signal. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the window of Lunar Observatory Station 7, watching Earth hang like a blue marble in the vast darkness of space. 20 years of searching the cosmos for signs of intelligent life had yielded nothing but static and false hopes. That was about to change. Dr. Chen. The urgent voice of her assistant, James, crackled through the station's comm system. You need to see this. Now. She found him in the main observation room, surrounded by holographic displays showing cascading data streams. His dark skin contrasted sharply with the pale blue light of the monitors, his expression a mixture of disbelief and excitement. What am I looking at, James? Sarah asked, studying the complex patterns flowing across the screens. It's us, he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. But it's impossible. The data stream showed a signal originating from the edge of known space, nearly 50 light-years from Earth. But what made it extraordinary wasn't its origin, it was its content. The signal contained human genetic code, more precisely engineered than anything their current science could achieve. Run it again, Sarah ordered, her heart pounding. Full spectrum analysis. The computers hummed as they processed the data. Each passing moment revealed more impossible truths. The signal wasn't just carrying genetic information, it was carrying humanity's complete biological blueprint, along with modifications and improvements that seemed centuries beyond their current capabilities. Sarah's hands trembled as she accessed the attached message. The text appeared in perfect English. Project: Human Ascension. Status: Terminated. Species: Marked for retention at current development level. Authorization: Council of 5. James, when was this signal sent? He checked the timestamps. That's the thing, Dr. Chen. According to these readings, this signal has been repeating for over 10,000 years. We're just now able to detect and decode it. Sarah felt the floor seem to shift beneath her feet. 10,000 years. The implications were staggering. Someone had engineered humanity, guided their development, and then stopped. But why? The answer came buried deeper in the signal's code. As their quantum computers continued decoding, they found more detailed records of human genetic potential, locked away behind artificial barriers in their DNA. Humanity wasn't just another evolving species. They were a carefully designed project, abandoned mid-development. Send word to the World Science Council, Sarah commanded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Priority Alpha. And James, delete nothing. Download everything to secure storage. Someone doesn't want us finding this. As if in response to her words, the observatory's sensors detected multiple objects dropping out of faster-than-light travel near Jupiter's orbit. The objects were massive, their designs unlike anything in human records. Dr. Chen, James called out, his voice tense. We're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessels. The message was brief. Project audit initiated. Containment protocols in effect. Stand by for evaluation. Sarah's jaw tightened as she watched the ships approach. Humanity had just discovered they were an abandoned experiment, and their creators had returned, not to guide them, but to ensure they remained contained. James, broadcast everything we found on all frequencies, she ordered. Send it to every research station, every government, every private server you can reach. If they're here to suppress this information, we need to make sure it's too late. The young assistant's fingers flew across the holographic controls. Broadcasting now. But Dr. Chen, what do we do when they get here? Sarah watched the approaching ships, her mind racing through the implications of everything they discovered. Humanity had been engineered, abandoned, and contained, but they'd survived. They'd advanced despite the artificial limitations placed on them. They'd reached for the stars even when they were meant to remain earthbound. We do what humans have always done, James, she replied, a fierce determination in her voice. We adapt, we overcome, and we prove them wrong about our potential. As the alien ships drew closer, Sarah Chen made a decision that would change the course of human history. They might have been an abandoned experiment, but they would not be a failed one. The signal had awakened them to their true nature, and now humanity would write its own destiny. The signal that had revealed their past would become the catalyst for their future, and the beings who had once played at being their gods would learn why you should never underestimate a species that had thrived despite being abandoned by its creators. The war for human potential was about to begin. The awakening. The information spread across Earth like wildfire, impossible to contain. Within hours of Dr. Chen's broadcast, every major government, research institution, and news organization had copies of the signal's contents. The alien ships hovering beyond lunar orbit served as an undeniable confirmation of everything the signal revealed. Admiral Helena Santos stood in the United Earth Defense Command Center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the alien vessels. 20 years in the military hadn't prepared her for this moment. No one was prepared to learn that humanity was an abandoned experiment. "They're scanning us," reported Captain Marcus Wong, his eyes fixed on the sensor readouts. "Every frequency, every bandwidth. They're particularly focused on our genetic research facilities." Helena's expression hardened. The aliens, the engineers, as people had started calling them, hadn't made any aggressive moves, but their presence felt like a sword hanging over humanity's head. "What's the status of Project Phoenix?" she asked, referring to the emergency initiative launched immediately after Dr. Chen's discovery. "Dr. Patel's team has made a breakthrough," Marcus replied, pulling up new data streams. "The genetic barriers in our DNA, they're not just restrictions, they're more like safety locks, and we might have found the key." In a secure facility beneath the Indian Ocean, Dr. Aisha Patel and her team had been working around the clock, analyzing the genetic blueprints found in the signal. What they discovered was revolutionary. Humanity's DNA contained dormant sequences that, if activated, could transform their species. The engineers didn't just abandon the project, Aisha explained during the emergency conference call. They left behind a backup plan, a way for humanity to eventually unlock its full potential, but it wasn't meant to happen for another 10,000 years. The genetic locks were designed to gradually release over millennia, allowing humanity to evolve slowly under controlled conditions. But now they had the complete blueprint, and more importantly, they had the keys. "If we do this," Helena warned, "we're declaring our independence. They'll have to respond." The decision wasn't just military. Representatives from every nation were connected to the call, listening as Dr. Patel explained the possibilities and the risks. The genetic upgrades would enhance human intelligence, physical capabilities, and most importantly, unlock psychic potential that had been deliberately suppressed. "The changes will be permanent," Aisha continued, "not just for those who receive the treatment, but for all future generations. We'll be forcing our evolution forward by thousands of years." The vote was unanimous. Humanity had spent long enough under the engineers' restrictions. It was time to break free. The first volunteers received the treatment within hours. Dr. Patel had insisted on being among them, along with key military and scientific personnel. As the genetic locks were removed, the changes began immediately. Helena watched through secure feeds as the volunteers transformed. Their neural patterns shifted, showing activity in previously dormant regions of the brain. Physical improvements followed. Enhanced strength, improved healing, sharper senses, but the most dramatic changes were invisible to normal observation. "I can feel them," reported one of the volunteers, a young researcher named David Cohen. "The ships above us. I can sense their crews. They're afraid." The engineers had created humanity with the potential for psychic abilities, but had locked those powers away behind genetic barriers. Now, as those barriers fell, humans were awakening to capabilities they had never imagined. In orbit, the alien ships began to move, shifting into attack positions. They had come to maintain humanity's containment, but they had arrived too late. The signal, their own signal, had given humanity the keys to their own liberation. "They're charging weapons," Marcus reported, his voice tense. Helena stood straight, her decision made. Launch the quantum satellites. Begin global distribution of the genetic key through the emergency broadcast network. If they want to stop this, they'll have to destroy every human on Earth. The engineers had created humanity as an experiment in controlled evolution. They had abandoned their creation, leaving behind locks and barriers to keep humans contained. But they had underestimated one crucial factor: human determination. As the genetic keys spread across the globe, humanity began to change. The awakening had begun, and with it, the real experiment. What happens when a species designed to be contained decides to break free? The engineers were about to learn that some experiments take on a life of their own. The resistance. The first attack came without warning. The engineers' ships opened fire on Earth's satellite network, attempting to stop the spread of the genetic key. But they were too late. The changes had already begun cascading through the human population. Deep within the Himalayan command center, Dr. Aisha Patel monitored the global transformation. The holographic displays around her showed millions of points of light, each representing a human being undergoing the awakening. More importantly, they showed something the engineers hadn't anticipated. The awakened humans were connecting. It's like a neural network, she explained to Admiral Santos through their secure link. Each awakened mind is linking with others, creating a collective consciousness while maintaining individual identity. We're becoming something they never planned for. The aliens' weapons were devastating, but they faced an unprecedented challenge. How do you fight an enemy that can read your intentions before you act? The awakened humans weren't just stronger or faster. They were linked in ways that made traditional warfare obsolete. David Cohen, now leading the Psychic Defense Division, coordinated Earth's first real counterattack. They built fail-safes into our DNA. He transmitted to the global defense network, but they never built them into their own technology. Their ships are vulnerable to psychic interference. The revelation changed everything. Across the globe, awakened humans began focusing their newly unleashed abilities on the alien fleet. Ships that had seemed invincible suddenly found their systems failing, their crews unable to maintain control as waves of psychic energy disrupted their neural interfaces. But the engineers hadn't survived for millennia by being unprepared. From their flagship, they launched a new weapon, a psychic dampening field designed to suppress the very abilities they had built into human DNA. They're trying to reset the locks, Aisha reported, watching as the dampening field spread from the alien ships. But they don't understand what they created. Human consciousness doesn't work like theirs. She was right. Where the engineers were logical, humans were intuitive. Where they sought control, humans embraced chaos. The dampening field that should have suppressed human psychic abilities instead became a conduit for something entirely new. Helena watched from the command center as reports flooded in. The awakened humans weren't just resisting the dampening field, they were using it, turning the engineers' own technology against them. Each attempt to suppress human consciousness only made the connection between awakened minds stronger. They engineered us to be adaptable, David transmitted from the front lines. They just never thought we'd adapt this quickly. The first real victory came when a group of awakened humans managed to seize control of one of the smaller alien vessels. The engineers had believed their neural interfaces were unhackable, but they hadn't counted on the raw creativity of human consciousness. Where their own people interfaced with their ships through rigid protocols, humans simply reached out and connected. We've accessed their database, reported Lieutenant Sarah Chen, daughter of the doctor who had first discovered the signal. They've done this before, created species, guided them, abandoned them when they didn't develop as planned. But they've never had one fight back like this. The engineers had created humanity as an experiment in controlled evolution, carefully designing every aspect of human development. But in doing so, they had inadvertently created their own worst nightmare. A species that could take their technology, their methods, and turn them into weapons of revolution. Aisha's team made another crucial discovery as they studied the captured alien data. The genetic locks weren't just about controlling our development, she announced during an emergency council meeting. They were about controlling our potential. The engineers feared what we might become if we evolved naturally. That fear, it seemed, had been well-founded. As more humans awakened, their collective consciousness began to exhibit properties that even the engineers' most advanced models hadn't predicted. They weren't just sharing thoughts or coordinating attacks. They were evolving, in real time, finding new ways to use their unleashed potential. They wanted to create a perfectly controlled species, Helena observed, watching as another alien ship succumbed to human psychic assault. Instead, they created one that thrives on breaking free of control. The resistance was no longer just about survival. It was about proving that humanity's greatest strength lay not in the capabilities engineered into their DNA, but in their unshakable determination to exceed their creators' expectations. As the battle for Earth's future raged on, one thing became clear. The engineers were about to learn a harsh lesson about the dangers of abandoning their experiments before the final results were in. The uprising. The captured alien vessel revealed a truth that changed everything. Earth wasn't just an experiment. It was one of thousands. Across the galaxy, other species languished under similar genetic locks, their potential capped by the same beings who had abandoned humanity. Admiral Helena Santos stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned Earth ship Phoenix, a hybrid of human innovation and reverse-engineered alien technology. Through the vessel's psychic interface, she could feel the determination of her crew, their minds linked in perfect synchronization. The engineer's main research facility has been located, reported David Cohen, his consciousness seamlessly integrated with the ship's systems. It's in the Orion Nebula, hidden within a fold of space-time. They'd been watching all their experiments from there. The human fleet had grown. Each captured alien vessel had been modified, enhanced with innovations that the engineers had never considered. Where their original designs relied on rigid protocols, humans had introduced adaptability. Where they demanded precision, humanity embraced controlled chaos. Dr. Aisha Patel's voice resonated through the fleet's psychic network. The facility contains genetic templates for every species they've engineered. If we can access it, we can free them all. The plan was audacious, perhaps impossible by the engineers' calculations. But as humanity had proven time and again, their calculations failed to account for human ingenuity. The fleet would split into 3 groups, one to engage the facility's defenses, another to evacuate the other experimental species they discovered, and a third to penetrate the facility itself. They still think in linear terms, Helena transmitted to the fleet. They expect us to attack their strongest defenses, to follow military logic. So we'll do what humans do best. We'll surprise them. The battle began not with an exchange of fire, but with silence. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect synchronization. Their crews combined psychic presence, temporarily overwhelming the facility's detection systems. In that moment of confusion, they struck. The engineers' defenses were formidable, built over millennia of technological advancement. But they had never faced an enemy that could adapt as quickly as humans. Each defensive measure they deployed was analyzed, understood, and countered by the collective intelligence of the human fleet. They're trying to reactivate the genetic locks. Sarah Chen's warning echoed through the psychic network. The engineers had launched a desperate measure, a wave of energy designed to reset all their experimental species to their base state. But humanity had long since moved beyond their original programming. The awakened humans didn't just resist the reset wave. They reformed it, turning it into a key that began unlocking the potential of every engineered species in range. Inside the facility, the strike team led by David Cohen encountered something unexpected. Other versions of humanity, different iterations that the engineers had created and abandoned. Some were more advanced physically, others mentally, but all had been deemed failures and contained. They didn't abandon us because we failed, David realized, the truth resonating through the psychic network. They abandoned us because we succeeded in ways they never intended. The engineers had wanted to create perfect, controllable beings. Instead, they had created species that yearned for freedom, that evolved in unexpected ways, that refused to be contained by their creator's limitations. And humanity, their latest failure, had become their worst nightmare. The facility's central core held the sum of the engineers' genetic research, the tools they had used to play God across the galaxy. As the human forces breached the final defenses, they found their creators not cowering in fear, but watching with scientific curiosity. "You continue to exceed parameters," the engineers' leader communicated directly into their minds. "Each response defies our models. Each innovation contradicts our understanding of your limitations." "That's because you never understood what you really created," Helena responded, her consciousness backed by the united minds of the human fleet. "You built beings in your image, then feared when they wanted to surpass their creators. You engineered life, then tried to contain it. That was your mistake." The next few moments would reshape the galaxy. The human fleet didn't just defeat the engineers, they offered them a choice. Humanity could destroy their facility, erase their work of millennia, free every species they had engineered, or it could acknowledge their creations as equals, help them reach their full potential, and learn from what they had unintentionally created. The engineers had spent eons conducting experiments, but now they faced one of their own. Could they adapt, or would they become extinct, replaced by the very beings they had created and feared? The answer would determine not just humanity's future, but the future of every species that had ever been shaped by the engineer's touch. The reckoning. The silence that followed humanity's ultimatum seemed to stretch across the cosmos. In the control center of their ancient facility, the engineers faced a reality they had never anticipated. Their creations had not only matched them, but had surpassed them in ways they had deemed impossible. Dr. Aisha Patel, connected to the vast network of awakened human minds, sensed something shifting in the engineers' collective consciousness. It wasn't fear. These beings had evolved beyond such simple emotions. It was something more profound. Recognition. "You wish to know why we abandoned you," the elder engineer communicated, its thoughts resonating through the psychic network. "Why we locked away your potential and left you to develop in isolation." Through their linked consciousness, every human in the fleet could access the memories now being shared. They saw the engineers' first attempts at creating life, their early failures, the species that had destroyed themselves or become threats to galactic stability. They witnessed the development of the genetic locks, intended not as chains, but as safeguards. "We sought to create life that could transcend our own limitations," the elder continued. "Each species was an attempt to solve the fundamental problem of consciousness, how to balance power with wisdom, advancement with stability." Admiral Helena Santos stepped forward, both physically and mentally. "And we were just another failed experiment." "No," the elder responded, surprising everyone. "You were the experiment that proved our fundamental assumption was wrong. We believed that evolution needed to be controlled, guided, restricted. You proved that true advancement comes from freedom, even the freedom to fail." The revelation rippled through the human consciousness. The engineers hadn't abandoned humanity because they had failed. They had stepped back because humanity had begun to evolve in ways they hadn't predicted, ways that challenged their entire understanding of consciousness and development. "Your species did something none of the others managed," another engineer added. "You turned our restrictions into catalysts for growth. Each barrier we placed became a challenge to overcome. Each limitation became an opportunity for innovation." Dr. Patel's consciousness surged forward, carrying with it the data they had gathered about other engineered species across the galaxy. "And what about them? Will you continue to keep them locked away from their potential?" The engineers' response was unexpected. Through the facility's vast networks, they began releasing the genetic locks on every species they had engineered, but with a crucial difference. Instead of simply removing the restrictions, they were implementing the same awakening protocol that humanity had developed, allowing each species to evolve at their own pace in their own way. You have shown us that the future of consciousness cannot be engineered. The elder acknowledge. It must be discovered, experienced, earned. We offer you not surrender, but partnership. The choice now lay with humanity. They could destroy the facility, erase the engineer's influence from the galaxy, and let each species find their own way. Or they could accept the engineer's offer, working together to help guide, but not control, the development of countless civilizations. Admiral Santos, Dr. Patel, and the rest of humanity's leaders shared their thoughts through the collective consciousness. The decision, when it came, was unanimous. We accept your offer, Helena announced, not as your creations, but as your equals. The age of experiments is over. The age of collaboration begins. The implications were staggering. Humanity would help establish a new galactic order, one where species were free to develop their potential naturally, with guidance available but never imposed. The engineers would share their knowledge, but the younger races would chart their own courses. As the human fleet prepared to return to Earth, carrying with them the seeds of a transformed galaxy, Dr. Patel made one final discovery in the engineers' databases. The signal that had started everything, the one that had revealed humanity's true nature, hadn't been left by the engineers at all. It was us, she realized, the truth spreading through the collective consciousness, a future version of humanity, reaching back through time, ensuring we would find our way to this moment. The engineers had created humanity, but humanity had engineered its own awakening. They had not only broken free of their creator's restrictions, they had transcended the very concept of limitation itself. As the fleet jumped into hyperspace, carrying the promise of a new era for all sentient life, one truth became clear. The greatest experiments are not those that control and contain, but those that set their subjects free to discover who they truly are. The story of humanity's awakening would echo through the cosmos for eons to come, not as a tale of rebellion or revenge, but as proof that true evolution cannot be engineered. It must be achieved through the courage to break free, and the wisdom to use that freedom well.